Hi, everyone. Today is May 18th, 2025, and we have a special guest back on the show, Laith Marouf. Laith joins us from Lebanon. He's an award-winning journalist and political commentator. Laith has been working in media since 1999 and is one of the creators and producers of the volunteer TV station and news outlet Free Palestine TV, which can be found on all social media platforms via freepalestine.video. Free Palestine TV not only has the best analysis of what is going on in Palestine and West Asia of any English language news outlet, but they're one of the best sources of news from the front lines. And Free Palestine TV publishes several videos per day from the front lines of Palestine, including the West Bank and Lebanon. Due to the fact that it is so difficult to get reliable and accurate news from the mainstream media in the West, we are very grateful to have Laith join us on the Activist News Network for a weekly news update on Palestinian resistance to Israel's occupation and genocidal campaign against Palestine. Laith, thank you for coming back on the show and welcome back to Activist News Network.
Great to be with you, and I'm happy that we're going to be producing this on a weekly basis again. I'm sure the audience were asking for this.
Yeah, we're so very, very excited to have you back. Thank you, Laith. Just to jump right into it, we first wanted to ask you about Palestine. On Friday, May 16th, it was reported that Israel's bombardment of Gaza, and particularly northern Gaza, has dramatically increased over the past 72 hours, resulting in the martyrdom of hundreds of Palestinians. Zionist ground forces have simultaneously made incursions on the outskirts of Beit Laina on the eve of Zionist ethnic cleansing plan, dubiously named Gideon's Chariot, which intended to, quote, destroy all of Hamas's military and governmental capabilities. What should we know about the resistance to this recent escalation? And what does it say about the resistance as Zionists are making their upteenth attempt at total ethnic cleansing of the Gaza Strip 19 months after Operation Al-Qasr flood?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the Zionists had only two choices from the beginning of Al-Aqsa flood in front of them. Either they accept equality with indigenous and or genocide them or ethnically cleansing them. There's no going back from that point. And this is where we at still 20 months later. The Gideon Chariot's invasion attempt right now is again the fourth or fifth attempt at invasion. They haven't been able to control the Gaza Strip. Resistance is still ongoing. We're still getting videos from the resistance in the field showing the ambushes of both soldiers that are in houses that are trying to blow up and or in tunnels and or convoys traveling inside Gaza being targeted. So the Zionists doesn't mean that they're going to stop even if they fail right now. The only thing that will stop them is force. And as we see, the Zionists now, as their own commentators are saying on television, nobody cares if they kill 100 Palestinians a day, 1,000 Palestinians a day is normal now after 20 months. And the resistance axis, the only front that is supporting the Palestinians is Yemen, and that is not effective enough to divert the military might of the Zionist colony off the Palestinians in Gaza. So they will continue genociding people. We know at least 200,000 people are already martyred in Gaza. The numbers that the Palestinian Ministry of Health in Gaza are releasing are very low. They don't compute mathematically. And so as long as they can, they will continue killing innocents. And their lust for Palestinian blood, specifically the blood of Palestinian children, is unquenchable. These are wild beasts. That's what Zionists are. And if they're not crushed, literally, they will not stop.
It's been 3 months since the start of the Zionist complete blockade of Gaza, preventing all humanitarian aid from entering. This has escalated the famine even beyond catastrophic levels. The Trump administration has announced the creation of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which will be tasked with carrying out the completely ridiculous aid distribution plan put forth by the Zionist entity, which would include using facial recognition and massive security checkpoints. How does this seemingly asinine proposal fit in with the US's and Israel's broader goals of ethnically cleansing the Gaza Strip? And how has the complete blockade on Gaza impacted Palestinians in Gaza?
Yeah, I mean, this is just dust in the eyes of the viewers. Basically, this is propaganda, including, all this talk about a fight between Netanyahu and Trump. It's the same that we heard about the fight between Netanyahu and Biden, and it's all just for public consumption. The truth is, the Zionist, and that includes the American government, want to either transfer the Palestinians out of Gaza and out of Palestine as a whole, ethnically cleansing them. But there's no one that is willing to take the Palestinian population, not because they hate the Palestinians or something, but they know that this will lead to troubles in their own countries. In any case, it's a war crime and a crimes against humanity, and the states do not want to be involved in this publicly, even if they are vassals like Egypt and or Libya and or Jordan. We heard lately that it's Libya that Trump wants, and now Trump is denying it because the Libyan state already collapsed because of the hint in the Washington Post that Libya will take the Palestinian refugees from Gaza. Now the whole state collapsed in a blink of an eye. So where the other choice in front of them is genocide, and they need time to conduct genocide, either through this starvation. People they don't just die when they're starving. It takes a while, and spreading diseases and bombardment from air, and that's what they want to do, and they will do it if nobody stops them.
You mentioned a fight between Trump and Netanyahu, similarities between Biden's relationship with Netanyahu. It was pretty controversial when Trump, during his visit to West Asia, didn't visit Israel. Do you seem to think these developments signal a change in the U.S. relationship with Israel, or do you think it's, like you said, all for show?
Yeah, it's all for show. There has to be, now that the kind of the pillar of resistance in the Arabic world, Syria, has fallen after 80 years of attempt to recapture it after it came out of French and British colonialism in 1942. After the fall of Syria, there is no more any Arabic state that is not captured by the West and or partially captured. Like even Yemen is partially occupied. So what does this mean right now? All this idea in the propaganda that was pumped in the Arabic and Muslim world, that the resistance axis is making things worse. You can liberate the Palestinians only if you act like the Zionist. You have an Arab lobby like the Israeli lobby. This crazy idea that somehow me as an Arab will be equal to a Jew, a Zionist Jew, in the eyes of white master in the White House. Okay, that somehow these Arab emirs will, with their favor and their money and their development, will win over white man away from the Zionists. This is the the crazy plot that was laid out in the Arabic media for decades. Okay, and so now that Syria is gone, and what's left is just resistance groups, no resistance states. Okay, the face of the Arabs, the new Arab that was molded by the Zionists and the imperialists behind them, these Gulf monarchs, are put on the stage. They have to somehow deliver on this, even if it's all theatrics, to avoid the backlash that's going to come now, where they're not able to save the Palestinians. And in fact, the genocide of Gaza is now accelerating. Okay, so resistance is not there. How is these liberal tools and or fascist tools like the Wahhabis are going to now, including the ISIS-controlled Damascus, the Jolani government that claimed that Syria is collaborating with Israel and protecting Israel, how are they going to now, what kind of propaganda are they going to put forward to justify their impetus and their collaboration with the empire, Washington, D.C., and their collaboration with the Zionists? So the tour was specifically designed, on the one hand, to uplift the Gulf vassals, to make them look important in their own media, in their own markets. At the same time, to play out a propaganda to the MAGA crowd, who are really upset watching for the last, what is it now, years since Trump came into power. Whatever it is, time is just disappearing here. He's, they're watching him for months being dragged like a slave by Netanyahu and the Zionists, and falling, backwards for them. And they're starting to get disgruntled. So this whole idea that Trump and Netanyahu is having a fight, and Trump is putting America first by going and milking those Arabs openly, okay? That also gets him points with the MAGA crowd, all of that. And it's also, he's just playing the MAGA crowd. They're all playing a theatrics as usual, and we need to look at the actions. The actions are what? Arab money is still being looted. Arab gas and oil money is being still looted to finance the empire, as it did for the last 80 years, to finance the Zionist colony as it did for the last 80 years. And nothing has changed. The game is clear. The other players are out of the scene. So if you can't see the lines, and not you as Michael, but the viewers, if the viewers can't see the clear lines right now that are, because there's not many playing pieces left on the chessboard, it's clear who's in power, how things are moving. And if people can't recognize it, then we're in real trouble as humanity.
Touching back on Syria, I wanted to ask you about that component of Trump's visit. He met with President Mohammed al-Julani, who's, you've told me, changed his name from Ahmed Hussein al-Shara. Apparently, during their meeting, President Trump agreed to drop sanctions against Syria. Immediately after their meeting, there were reports of clashes between Syria's general security forces and suspected ISIS members just outside of Aleppo. Laith, what is your reaction and analysis of President Trump meeting with Mohammed al-Julani?
Yeah, I mean, again, this is now a moment of clarity for anyone that was confused over the last 30 years since September 11 about where do these Wahhabi death squads stand and who's their master and what is their game. The game of the Wahhabi death squads for 30 years has been to create locations of chaos where the United States can have an excuse to attack and also continue the destruction that they started, these Wahhabi death squads, destabilizing specifically Muslim countries, Arabic countries that have multi-faith, multi-confessional populations. Look at what they're doing in Nigeria, for instance. Look at what they're doing in Somalia and Kenya and Ethiopia. So it's clear now for anyone that Al-Qaeda and ISIS are a construct of the intelligence services of the United States, Israel, and the whole components of the empire, including the Saudi intelligence services, the Pakistani intelligence services, and what have you, that manipulated things this way. And now, not only did Trump, by shaking hands with al-Jolani, bear this reality for everybody, but by doing so, by shaking hands now, at this moment, while al-Jolani's Wahhabi death squads are committing genocide openly against Christian, Druze, Alawi, Shia, and Sufi Muslims in the country, as they did before, when supposedly the United States attacked Iraq and Syria because of ISIS, right? Now, and added to the moment where the Zionists have been committing genocide themselves. And what does this mean? That means now we have a total normalization for any component within the imperial order to openly genocide, ethnically cleanse, create huge demographic changes, and redraw the borders of human interaction in their territories. Tomorrow, we will see Turkey doing such a thing against the Kurds or the Armenians again, openly. And they can, because as a component of the Zionist empire ruled from DC, they should be expecting to have the same rights as the Zionist colony and or the Saudis and the Wahhabi death squads. As so this moment has huge ramifications, and that is not only about the clarity, but about what is normalized in our world today. And as we see the overinflated idea of multipolarity, or China and Russia opposing and being an opposite pole that could stop these things, are unraveling themselves, because the space of where genocide is being conducted and is expanding, and neither Russia or China are creating any real opposition to the mass genocide across the whole of what we call the Arabic world, from Libya to Sudan to Somalia to Yemen to Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Palestine. This is one of the hugest killing fields that we can imagine since World War II.
Laith, is there anything we have not yet covered or you think we should cover regarding Trump's visit of West Asia?
No, we did great, I think.
Okay, wonderful. Well, moving on, we wanted to ask you a bit about Yemen. On May 13th, Reuters, citing 4 U.S. officials, reported that last week's U.S.-Yemeni ceasefire came about after, quote, U.S. intelligence started picking up indications from the Yemeni fighters were looking for an exit after 7 weeks of relentless U.S. bombings, end quote. However, this seems like a transparent retort to the New York Times article that made it apparent that it was Donald Trump who was looking for an exit, after it became clear that those 7 weeks of relentless U.S. bombings had accomplished nothing. But Laith, what is your reaction and assessment of the ceasefire between the U.S. and Yemen, and what, if any, impact do you think it'll have on Yemen's support and solidarity with Palestinians and Palestine?
Well, clearly it had zero effect on Yemeni support for Palestinian resistance and providing this solidarity front. The Yemenis continue to bombard the Zionist colony on a daily basis. They continue to attack ships that are going to the Zionist colony on a daily basis. So that didn't stop. And the American withdrawal and whatever people are describing it as a ceasefire with Yemen is kind of, again, part of a media ploy. The Americans could have bombarded Yemen from the airfields that they control in Al Udeid, Qatar, in Saudi Arabia, in the Emirates, in the Zionist colony, in Jordan, across the waters in Djibouti. And so why didn't they use these air bases originally? Is because they were too scared that if they openly use those air bases to bombard Yemen, the Yemenis will bombard the countries that these aircrafts are taking off from, and we will have, all these high-risers in Doha and Dubai and Riyadh falling down, and all the oil fields up on flames. So that is what forced the United States to use its aircraft carriers and the Diego Garcia island chain that is been ethnically cleansed of its indigenous populations who have been wallowing in Mauritius for the last 60 somewhat years as refugees. That's another story for another day. Because of that. And what ended up happening is Yemen's missiles, hypersonic missiles, and drones were so successful at hitting the aircraft carriers, their whole groups of defense mechanisms, and the jets that are taking off from these aircraft carriers, to the point where these aircraft carriers that are nuclear powered, these aircraft carriers have a nuclear reactor in them, they were at the danger of sinking or exploding for the first time ever since their creation as nuclear-powered aircraft carriers. It would have caused a huge nuclear fallout if such an incident happened, and nobody can calculate what is the end result of this. So the United States plan to use their aircraft carriers as a means to project power against Yemen have failed. They were defeated. And this now has huge ramifications globally about what is the United States able to do to project power as it did for the last 80 years since World War II, to project power through these massive aircraft carriers. Now it can't anywhere. If Yemen can neutralize the threat of aircraft carriers, then every other militarized country like Iran, China, Russia can do so too. And that's now out of the whole calculations for future wars. These aircraft carriers are zero, null effect, especially against a bigger enemy. And so why would I say that the United States is not really going to stop bombing Yemen? Because Israel is still a component of the United States empire, and Israel is still going to continue bombarding Yemen. And in fact, the United States will be bombarding Yemen pretending it is Israel, because Israel doesn't have enough assets to have a sustained bombardment campaign of Yemen, especially when it wants to conduct a whole massive genocide in Gaza and in Palestine itself. So there will be jets, especially the F-35s of the United States, that have been moved from all around the world into the airfields in Israel, are going to be conducting this campaign of attacks on Yemen, but still pretending to be Israeli.
Wow, fascinating analysis. Again, it's truly great to have you back. Is there anything else regarding Yemen that you'd like to cover? All right. In that case, we'd like to move on to Lebanon. On May 15th, it was reported that Israeli occupation forces launched airstrikes all over South Lebanon, killing at least one person in Arnoun. Laith, what is the significance of this attack?
Yeah, this is a continuation of daily bombardment of South Lebanon and sometimes the Beqa Valley. And as we saw over the last few months, I mean, our crew at Free Palestine TV, we're recording daily attacks. And this is not just directed towards anyone that is associated with Hezbollah that they can pinpoint, but also anyone that is involved in the reconstruction, the replanting of agricultural lands. A few days ago, we witnessed a drone that attacked a farmer that was, helping other farmers fix up their, farming equipment, their plows and such, their tractors. And we also saw just yesterday there was attacks on fishermen in Al Naqura area. So this is continuing on a daily basis, and it shows, number one, the collaboration of the United Nations forces in South Lebanon with this condition. We even witnessed, not us, but it was big in the news here a few days ago when a foreign journalist, she was with the UNIFIL at the UNIFIL base beside Hula, where the Israelis are building an illegal base into Lebanese territory, expanding it just beside the UNIFIL base. And she was had permissions. She was with the UNIFIL soldiers standing, taking pictures, and the snipers from the Israeli base fired right beside her head. And the UNIFIL soldiers just sat down and did nothing. They didn't protect her. They didn't protest. They didn't fire back at the Israeli soldiers. So this is the reality. And again, we're left with this condition and of if you can't resist the Zionist, the imperialist, then you are ripe for culling, ripe for genocide. This is how they see it. But they've been conducting it everywhere else. Why should they be able to? Why shouldn't they have the right to do it in Lebanon? And even us over the last week specifically, we've had drones follow us on a daily basis for hours at a time. Surveillance drones, quadcopters, and others. So the situation is very dangerous in the south of Lebanon. It's not normal. And this situation where the Israelis can kill at will and no response comes to them is not attainable, and it's not sustainable. So there will be something. We just don't know how things are gonna play out here in the south of Lebanon. You're muted.
Apologies. Laith, the U.S. and Israel continue to put pressure on the Lebanese government to disarm Hezbollah. What is the latest news regarding these developments, and what is the status of Hezbollah, particularly its armed wing? And since we last had you on the show, what have been those developments?
Yeah, so there's a lot of these propaganda and rumors that somehow Hezbollah is going to disarm, and categorically this is not going to happen. There's a change in the strategy and tactics of Hezbollah that we will see in the upcoming fight that is destined to happen, reflash of hostilities with the Zionist colony. Hezbollah knows that now is surrounded on all sides by Wahhabi death squads on the east and the north, the Zionists in the south, and the UNIFIL in the waters. It knows that any future war will entail attacks from all sides, and they're getting ready for this. So, and look, it's not only Hezbollah that's getting ready for whatever fight that's coming. The Druze population, who just saw the genocide of Druze in the neighborhoods of Damascus and attempted attacks on Sueda, the Christian, specifically Orthodox, that saw what happened to the Christians in the suburbs of Damascus, in the oldest churches and oldest Christian areas in the whole world, in the place where only the Aramaic is still spoken, where they were all ethnically cleansed and nobody's talking about it. The Christians here saw this and they're getting ready. And so, and of course, you have all the Palestinians, all the Sufi Lebanese that saw what's happening to the Sufis in Syria. Everybody's actually quietly getting ready for this big battle that's coming. There's no way the Zionists and the United States will leave Lebanon safe for any form of resistance, even including a resistance thought or resistance media, which is Lebanon is very leading space in these issues. So it's really naive to think that Hezbollah will disarm. And we're just having right now, over the last 2 weeks, including today, the municipal elections that were supposed to show weakness of Hezbollah. And the Saudis, the Emiratis, the Qataris, the Turks, the Israelis, the Americans, the French, all of them dropped millions of dollars on these municipal elections to try to change who controls the city halls, the town halls, the city councils, town councils across the country to supposedly come out with a conclusion that Hezbollah has lost the support of the population, okay, and or its allies have done. And up until now, there's no change of representation in terms of decrease in Hezbollah's representation. Any council that it controls, it still controls. Any city hall it controls, it still controls. Areas that are allied with it are still in the hands of its allies. And there is only brief places where things are changing, and that's in the Sunni and or the Christian Maronite areas. And the still, this is not significant because it switches within spaces that are already imperialist. So the imperialist fools or tools are fighting each other, and they're getting gains and losses, and they're going to go and present those gains and losses to their master and say, see, I did a better job than the other house slave, master, invest in me, Saudi or Qatar. Okay, this is how it's working out. And we have seen over the last week, specifically in the Baalbek area, in the Beqa Valley, huge amounts of money being dropped to buy votes because the Beqa Valley and the Baalbek region are so strongly, pro Hezbollah, and where Hezbollah was militarily born. And because, as we saw, the Shia tribal resistance in the north of the Beqa Valley succeeded in defeating multiple waves of Wahhabi death squads attacks after the fall of Damascus. The American embassy and the Saudis and Emiratis invested tens of millions of dollars and created a opposition Shia platform to run. And they've been trying to buy votes. And the funny part is that Hezbollah is telling everybody to take the money. Any voter that is offered money by these, to take it, okay, and then just go vote the way you were going to vote anyways, because it's great, it's free funding that's going to come from these fools that pop-up politicians that nobody heard about before, that suddenly have millions of dollars to put up ads across the streets and in these remote villages. And so it's going to be another flop. And in fact, this election that was supposed to be a test for Hezbollah's strengths and in support-wise, it's going to show that there has been no retreat of Hezbollah's popularity in the country.
Thank you for providing that depth of analysis on the municipal elections. I saw a bit about that. Thank you very much. Since you were last on Activist News Network, tensions between India and Pakistan escalated into an all-out shooting conflict between the two nations, with Kashmir being the flashpoint. Laith, what is your assessment of why this conflict escalated at this juncture, and what role do you think U.S. imperialism played? Do you think the ceasefire will hold?
Yeah, I mean, look, the United States has a primary interest now that China has surpassed it technologically and has surpassed it economically. It has a primary objective to halt that advancement pace. If it doesn't, it will be too late in 30 years. The United States will be a second-grade power. And because of the parity in power that exists right now between China and the United States, and the mutual destruction that is guaranteed in a direct war, then the only strategy that is open to the United States to slow the advancement of China is to cut all its routes of trade, right? And so China either needs to go by land through the Himalayas down to Pakistan, to the waters there, and or through land to all the way to Syria and the Mediterranean, and or through land to Russia and Europe, and again the sea routes that are through the Strait of Malacca in Indonesia and so on. So if the United States is able to create a ring of fire, cutting the routes of trade out of China, it will increase the cost of Chinese products. It will maybe bring the United States and its corporations into an ability to be more, options that are open to markets in Africa, Europe, and Latin America. And this is why, while it may seem crazy that the United States will confront Iran because how it will disrupt all oil and gas trade and or trade through the Indian Ocean. When you think about it in that conceptualization that the United States wants to create a ring of fire around China, then it makes more sense that the United States is willing to let the oil fields of the Gulf to burn because it has its own oil and gas, and it wants to force Europe and Africa and Latin America to buy it instead of getting dependency. And so when we understand from this conceptualization, although India right now is a vassal of the West, controlled by Hindu fascists, Hindutva, although Pakistan is also a vassal, which is controlled by a military coup against Imran Khan, the elected president that was not a vassal of the Americans. Although these two countries are vassals, the United States wants them to actually enact this, as we see. They want to cut the route that Pakistan built with China during Imran Khan's presidency, the route bringing train tracks and highways all the way from the borders between China and Pakistan all the way to the Arabian Sea and Karachi on the waters there. So this was supposed to be one of the major Silk Road hubs, and now it's going to be out of business. China is going to have to find a different route, and it already invested all these billions, trillions of dollars in this route. And Pakistan is happy to keep this infrastructure now, and kind of looting it now that the Chinese will not be able to use this route.
So we've talked a bit about the infrastructure going into Pakistan from China. One of the more loud and visible aspects of the outbreak of hostilities was the modern Chinese weapon technologies used by Pakistan. And meanwhile, India is using US and Western weapons. Some are saying that the Chinese military technology, particularly its fighter jets and hypersonic missiles, were greatly superior to the US and Western military hardware used by India. Laith, what's your assessment of this aspect between conflict in India and China?
Yeah, I mean, definitely we saw testing of more weapons that couldn't be tested on the Arabs. This is what we saw. For the first time, we saw a dogfight in the air. We haven't seen that in decades. And clearly, the Chinese jets outperformed the French and American jets. Definitely, they outperformed them for the price range. China can sell, that are jets that are more affordable, and they can do, as we see, a better job. So that's true. But if you look at geography, modern Pakistan doesn't have geographic depth. India doesn't need to, fly even over Pakistan to bombard most of Pakistan. They can do what the Israelis were doing before to Syria, bombing Syria when there was a sovereign country with a real army with an air defense system. It would have to fire from far away from the Mediterranean or Iraqi airspace or Jordanian airspace. And so India could hit any target in Pakistan without getting into Pakistani airspace. On the other hand, Pakistan can do the same because India is so large and geographically much bigger and much wider. So did we see a real fight? Was this a real war? All those are questions. Why would two vassals create a war that could lead to a nuclear holocaust for everybody? Those are questions that make it, in my mind, again, much theatrics. The intended target was cutting the trade route. There was never going to be a war between China and Pakistan. It also, the other intended target of this scuffle is to create more sectarian hate within India and Pakistan. And we saw, huge demonstrations in the Muslim cities of India, for instance, which is now, going to make those cities and towns targets to Hindu fascist thugs that are going to probably descend on them somehow. Similarly, in Pakistan, the Indians purposefully targeted a few Sikh, temples that are holy sites, and now this is going to create a more Sikh militancy, which is already very militant in terms of the global Sikh, movement that is targeting India all the time. So these are all things that are objectives of the empire. And neither of them are objectives of any state that we can designate as sovereign. Like India is not sovereign at this moment, and neither is Pakistan.
Speaking a bit about the polar situation with the two forces acting on this area, we wanted to ask, because many of our friends on the left, particularly in the US, have suggested that there are similarities between the respective occupations of Palestine and Kashmir. Laith, is it fair or accurate to compare Palestine and Kashmir? And more importantly, how does the security crisis between India and Pakistan over Kashmir inform our analysis of a changing global correlation of forces?
Yeah, there's many similarities between the situations in Kashmir and Palestine, and the number one thing is geography. You see, I think a lot of people forget the importance of geography in the course of history and wars. And what do I mean by that? Kashmir is a region that is at the center of the meeting between the Sino civilizations, the Hindu, Indian civilizations, and the Muslim, Iranian civilizations. Okay, and the Turkic civilization. So it's a geographically, like Palestine is a crossroad, and its geography creates these realities of where it is, makes empires want to capture it, makes empires, army hordes go back and forth over hundreds of years. This is geography. Okay, so that's number one. Number two is clearly that Kashmir is, vastly majority of it is Muslim, and the state of India refused the results of a referendum in 1948. And by the way, personally, I'm against the partition of Pakistan and India and Bangladesh. I am against that. I believe that the Indian people, Indo-Iranian peoples, okay, are one and should be unified, and that this schism that was created by the British on purpose in 1948 is to undermine the development of this great civilization and to cause it to have an internal war, as has been for since 1948, that doesn't allow this great civilization to rise to its rightful place in human history. So I'm not saying any of this to justify more and more fragmentation of the Indian civilization. I'm actually for India and Pakistan re-emerging and including Kashmir with protections for everybody's religions and languages or accents. There's no difference between Punjabi as a language and Hindu as Hindi as a language. Sorry, not Hindu, the religion, Hindi, except what script they're writing. You know that one is writing in Arabic script and one is writing in Sanskrit script. And here's another, little tidbit here of knowledge that may be going to blow up a lot of people's mind. Sanskrit as a language, as a written language, was not written in India. It was written in Syria. Okay? How? Thousands of years ago, there was a class of warrior mercenaries in India that would offer their services to any people, kings around the region. And they were brought as warriors. This is at the time of the Assyrians, basically. They were mercenaries. And they decided to settle in Syria, settled in northern Syria, which is now in South Turkey. And they learned writing from the Syrian people. The first alphabets, as we know, are written in that region, and developed Sanskrit right there. And eventually, when they decided, nobody knows. Historians can't understand what happened there, but they decided one day, yeah, I'm done with this mercenary jobs, and packed up all of them and went back to India, and brought with them written Sanskrit. So these are, Pakistanis and Indians as we know them today are the same people. Their languages are the same. They're written in different scripts, but it's not actually a different culture.
Fascinating. Thank you for, as always, for just including such depth and richness of information and analysis. Thank you so much. Kind of shifting focus here, we wanted to ask about your latest assessment of Western and, in particular, the U.S.'s support and solidarity for Palestine. What is your assessment, and what, if any, recommendations and advice do you have for those in the West that want to stand in solidarity and support of Palestine?
Well, my assessment is total condemnation, actually. I don't think there has been anything sufficient done by the anti-war, anti-genocide, progressive, whatever circles you want to call them, in the West. I think they brought shame upon themselves because of how pacifist they were. I mean, there is a televised genocide as we speak right now, all conducted in their name. There's definitely a huge part of the blame has to fall on Jewish anti-Zionists that up until today allow Judaism to be manipulated as the shield to protect genocide. I think there's, nothing to be said right now about the Jewish anti-Zionist movement that is admirable. People may feel that there's a few people that are talking, we shouldn't condemn everybody, or few people that are Jewish lost a job here or there. So what, I say. And for the wider public in imperial domains, if you don't care about the fate of the Palestinians, the Lebanese, the Syrian peoples, I would say care for your own fate, because as we see what is normalized now in these killing fields from Libya to Somalia to Syria is beginning to be normalized inside the imperial domains. These mass ICE raids and mass deportations to El Salvador death camp are just the opening shots of what's going to happen. If you could be kidnapped from the street by an unmarked van with people that are wearing baklavas because they're supposedly ICE, tomorrow you'll be kidnapped by an unmarked van with people covering themselves in baklavas that are not ICE. It's normal now to just walk into a neighborhood and nab women and beat up anyone that stands in the way. The door has been open, Pandora's box open right now, and it's up to you to take your life seriously. And if you don't do anything physically to stop the march towards this end, maybe you don't deserve to escape the wrath of this genocide that's going to expand to everywhere. Palestinians, Lebanese people, anyone that is resisting are the ones that are worth living. Their life are worth something. They are not just a couch. Most of humanity is acting as if they are a piece of furniture, an inanimate object. Only the two warring parties, the fascists, who are questing to live the best life by killing others and looting others, and the revolutionaries who are questing to live their best life by saving others and fighting the fascists, are the ones that actually will decide the course of history. And everybody else is just going to be an inanimate object in the course of history. This is the reality.
Thank you for that assessment, for sharing. Those are all the questions that we have for you today. Is there anything else that you would like to discuss or cover before we close?
Thank you very much, Michael, for having me, and hopefully we'll see you next week. And sometimes I may sound harsh, but I hope this pushes people to take action in this dire time.
No, I think sometimes harsh words are necessary to get through, and I thank you. Well, thank you so much for coming back on the show. We look forward to speaking with you next week, of course. And to our audience, thank you for tuning in, and please support the incredibly important and courageous work that Laith and other volunteer journalists are engaged with at Free Palestine TV. Please donate to Free Palestine TV via freepalestine.video.
We state these facts only to let you know that those of us who are revolutionary, Pan-Africanists, is not because we love revolution. It is historically determined, and we have no alternative but to follow history and to use history for the benefit of our people.